All right, we are back. I am back. There's no we. Uh, there is no we. I am back to do some Watch Me Work for Todd Lockwood's Found Worlds art book. If you've seen the previous one of this, you'll know what's going on. Otherwise, what you're watching is me working, almost literally, doing book design in InDesign, which is an Adobe product. So if you're sort of curious about how to use InDesign, I don't know if this is the best resource for you because I'm not going to be doing tutorial, like straight up tutorial stuff. I'm basically just going to be working, and you will watch and see how the workflow and whatnot goes. I'm trying to get all my screens in order here. It's one of the things they don't tell you, or a lot of people don't tell you as far as live streaming is concerned. There's a piece of software that is running the actual live stream, and then there's YouTube, and having both those windows open are good so that I can figure out whether or not I need to stop streaming for some reason. So if you're new to this, this will be me working. It will not be super exciting some of the times. Some of the times it might be. I did learn from the previous broadcast that I had the little preview menu of my face doing my talking. I think I had it over here last time, and I realized that you couldn't really see some of the stuff that I was working on, so I moved it over here because you don't care too much about what is essentially a list of swatches and then thumbnails for other pages. So what's going on is we're getting, I don't want to say near the end, but we are getting kind of near the end where all the artwork I believe that we're going to have is included, has been put into place. The Wacom tablet is causing me stress lately because it's about 1,000 years old. I'm starting to give up the ghost. The cable part is all fringed and worn down. And then Windows 10 doesn't want to play nicely with it because of the Windows Ink thing, which I know I can turn off by application and blah, 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 blah. So it's just a combination of things. Anyway, so I had worked on it last week up to a certain point, and then I'd gotten to a point where I couldn't proceed any further without feedback from Todd. So that took place yesterday. Both of us have busy schedules, and it would have been awesome for us to just be able to immediately Skype about the thing, but life doesn't work out that way. And we live in the same state, but we live like 2 hours apart, basically. So we generally Skype. I actually don't mind collaboration and kind of work settings, even though I work at home. I liked when I had a job having other people around me because I can want alone time in the evenings where I just want to sit and play Madden, or I go outside and smoke a cigar or do whatever. But in general, I'm kind of a social dude, especially with creative endeavors and that kind of stuff. Anyway, so Todd and I had a chat about caption boxes, which are these things here, which are basically sort of saying, hey, what's the title of the thing and the year of the thing and the medium the thing was made in, which is fairly traditional. So you've got, these are all placeholders, but for example, this is completely digital, and let's use this as an example. So this most likely is a silver dragon. I don't know if it was actually done in 2001, but each painting will basically be like silver dragon, here's the year, oils, size of the thing. As you get later on into Todd's work, obviously more of it will turn digital. We have little X's for placeholders here too, although he still does work traditionally. This, for example, pencil and digital is probably accurate for this bronze dragon. He would have done a pencil sketch, scanned it in, and then taken it into Painter. He, I think, does some things, some light things in Photoshop, but maybe not. He was one of the first guys that I knew that had adopted Corel Painter, which is a painterly version of Photoshop. There are people that can do some of the same things in Photoshop. Painter makes it a little easier to create textures and brushes and things like that, up to the point of like the ink running out on the brush and having to like redab it and that kind of stuff. You can get very painterly effects in Painter. Photoshop, I know, is probably, I know that a lot of the guys that use it for design work, meaning world building design and that kind of thing, you want to be able to base stuff off of photographs. So you pull in a photograph and then you're able to sort of manipulate it in certain ways or clone over the top of it or whatever. I've used Photoshop. I did an internship. It was just the coast real briefly where I was altering magic cards. Oh no! What that boils down to are there are certain countries where certain things aren't legal. For example, or not legal or not accepted the same way they are here. So in China, for example, I don't believe that they can show bones or skeletons, human skeletons. It's a cultural thing, from what I understand. I am not pretending like I know that much about China. All I know is I went into Wizards of the Coast and spent a week altering artwork to make bones into flesh. So that would involve something like, this is not a super great example. Todd doesn't do a lot of skeleton stuff, but this thing has things that can be interpreted as bones. Let's pretend this was a skeleton and there were exposed bone. You'd basically use the cloning tool in Photoshop to maybe grab a patch of cloth and sort of go over the top of it. And it alters the artwork, and it doesn't look as perfect as if the artist would have done it themselves. But because I have an artistic illustration background and a Photoshop background and all the rest of that, hopefully I did it as well as something like that could be done without the actual artist repainting over it. I'm guessing there's some sort of financial thing involved with why they don't have the artists just redo it, and it's possible now they do. I don't know. But that was my job for a week. Anyway, we are spiraling off content here. So a lot of these caption boxes, or what happened was, is we have a lot of artwork, especially into the Dritz section, and then after that, where there's just a shitload of these gorgeousy double-page spreads. And the idea was to maybe have a blank space like that, and then you'd list previous spread, next spread, previous spread, and have all this stuff listed out. But when we looked at it, it's like that's a huge block of text. And people aren't buying this to read a novel. They can buy us novels for that. So what are different ways that we could do that with? One of the options was just kind of list everything at the end, or that may have been the only other option, or not having captions or whatever. But what we decided is we kind of went through page by page and figured out, for example, this spread here, this darkened area here, you could have the title and stuff set upon this, and it's going to be fine. You're going to take a little corner of the art. But for the most part, you're good. And then I'll be able to, I haven't played around with this yet, and I haven't even talked to Todd about this yet, who's probably watching. But while the text is on the background pages is generally shades of black, I don't ever use 100% black, by the way, which is a clever little book design typography hint. Most of the time when I'm doing stuff for print, I use 80 to 85% black, because black it can get a little painful on the eyes. And here's the tricky bit. If you're using 85% black on your normal text, then if you do a 95% or 100% black word, it functions like a bold without having a blocky bold. So now you have two levels of bold. You have a darker word, and then you have a literal bolded word. And I like that flexibility. So what I will more than likely do on the ones that I'm adding stuff into the corners, ooh, pardon me, I'm not tired. I'm getting that yawning because I haven't talked all day thing. For example, this is I most likely will sample this very super light greenish blue in here as opposed to white. and that will make it blend into the illustration a little more aesthetically pleasing. So that was a day of us talking, going through all the paintings, saying we want this one here, this one's fine, we want this here. This is a little mark as we went along. I'm going to try to get this gargoyle face out of the gutter. I don't think that it's going to work, but I made a mark of it so I can dick around with it a little bit. These boxes are overkill. The actual text is going to take up so much less space. It's going to be similar to his, that's the thing, is to emulate his signatures a little bit, not with the font, but with the size and impact on the painting. So that's what you're seeing basically, is a lot of that, and that was a whole day. So that got us to the point where we realized there were some things, there were some other things. There was a piece of process page that, because the original illustrations are so small, let me see if I can find that. We wanted to do 2 pages of process spread. Here it is. So this is a painting of his called Wind, and we wanted to do a bunch of process for it. But all of these pictures that were taken and sketches and things are very small. Literally, I think this is pretty close to the normal size of what these things are. So trying to spread this out over 2 pages and taking up all that space, I'd have to blow them up very large and then they'd get very pixely, and that's no good. So that got reduced to a spread, which opened up a page, for example. So what that enabled is, like for this painting, for example, originally just had a single page and it was kind of shrunk down. I think this was the actual size I had it to. So it would have been something like that. But now we've got space for it, so we're going to spread it out. Yeah, literally. And then we found a page where we can do some process for this painting, which I believe some of that he posted somewhere, because I think I've seen it online, either on his website or it might have been part of the Kickstarter. But now we'll get a nice large high quality print of the process of it. Ooh, excuse me, what else in here? So, and then we figured out we need to move some stuff around. And that came from me. I'm throwing stuff in an order that I think looks aesthetically pleasing. 2 things happen there. One is Todd may not think that it looks aesthetically pleasing, and that happens. That's fine. The other thing is it got some stuff separated from other stuff. So, for example, these are all CH, I think, or CJ Cherry, who does a series of novels that Todd did the covers for, which feature these dark-skinned aliens, which to me looked like drow. So they were just like, oh, the alien drow paintings. We had 3 of them here, and then there are 2 of them there. These 2 are magic cards, 2 more of the things here, and then the ones with S on them is a different series. So how can we rearrange those where they're still aesthetically pleasing, but the work is grouped together? There's a giant section up above with magic cards, for example. So these 2 magic cards, if possible, should try to be up with their brethren, which is through here. And then I had these druid concepts, which I thought were really cool. And the paintings they led to was here and here. So how is there a way that I can get those druids on the same page or on the same spread, basically? So all of those things were talked about. And when we had 4 magic paintings, we originally thought maybe shrinking stuff up, and 2 of them up, and then putting the 4 blocks here, 1, 2, 3, 4. But since we're already putting stuff on the paintings up above within the painting, magic paintings will work pretty good for that too. Most of them will be. This is when we were still thinking about shrinking, so we were picking out 2 to shrink up. But that, for example, is a great spot for a title, great spot for a title, great spot for a title, and then this one I'll probably put over here. And then at a certain point, I may switch some around, the ones that have it over here, instead of having one odd man out. That's a nice spread we wanted to keep, so we're going to do this stuff in here. Maybe a little bit of text in there to what they are, because these aren't magic cards. This was for Anachronism, which was a card game that I briefly did art direction on. And so those are all together. That kind of thing. All right. So that was a lot of what we did. That was all of what we did. We went through and just tried to figure shit out and get stuff more in order, where the actual artwork itself is in place now. There's access through this stuff because we have layered files for this, and I'm going to go through and remove this text, which is fairly nice typography. I don't know who did it, so I'm not going to do a necessary critique on things. I know what font it is because of these Fs, but or at least I know what font those Fs are. But I'm going to remove the typography to concentrate on just the glory of the art on itself, because you guys have seen, or those of you that have these books have seen this piece of art with the typography. So we're going to remove that, which again does not mean that I thought the person that did it did a horrible job. It's just we want to concentrate on the art. Actually, it may have been Todd doing it, so it may just be beating around the bush to protect Todd. All right, so, okay, so this is mostly going to be me working. There's going to be a lot of, if you're not into watching people just work on stuff, it's going to be a little boring. I'm going to stay on pages for longer than you want me to. You'll be like, oh, I've seen this illustration page on. I want to see what else there is. And it's like, nah, that's not what we're doing right now. I'm not going to be filling in specific caption boxes quite yet. The first thing I'll be doing is moving stuff around, all the notes that we made as far as where art needs to go and all the rest of that. First lesson. Most of you already know this, but so file management, I've talked about this before. File management is crucial on things. Also, I'll be multitasking, occasionally checking my phone, and it is not to check memes. It is because texting, or emails, which there's an email telling me that I'm broadcasting live now, so that's very exciting. I have a separate YouTube channel for this stuff, and then I do for my normal stuff. So it's sending to my normal email. It's like, hey, this guy, because it thinks we're different people, this guy is going live now. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Anyway, I've talked about this in other videos. File management is crucial. It's a best practices thing. It's something you should do on your own projects, even if no one else is ever going to see them. Still do it. Get into habits, because habits are important. When you get a project or decide you want to do a project, sit down and create the folder structure that you think the project is going to, basically, if you're doing the same sort of thing, if you're writing a book, if you're doing a comic, if you're doing book design, whatever, and you're doing that on a regular basis, you have learned what folders you're going to need for a thing. Even if you're writing a book, you may have research folders, and you may have research folders that need to be broken down on specific subjects. Like, I need to find out about all these. Let's pretend we're writing a Star Trek novel, because that's an easy one that I can think of examples of. You're going to be like, I need character backgrounds for Kirk and Spock and McCoy and Uhura and all these other people. And then I'm going to need information on the Federation. I'm going to need information on the Klingons, and I'm going to need information on this, that, and the other thing. And you may break those up into separate folders, because initially they just may be Word documents, but maybe you've got a list of, or you've got some illustrations of Klingon warbirds, so they need to be in the Klingon like visual reference folder as opposed to media reference, because when you're in the middle of working on something and the deadline's coming up, or you're feeling stressed, or you're in a creative groove that you don't want to break and you want to look up a piece of information, the more specific place you have it, that you can remember, the better for finding it, right? That's like a personal project. Especially important when you're working on a project for somebody else, because you theoretically could be handing these files off. to someone when you're done with the project. Todd and I haven't talked specifically about this, which we probably should have contractually. Sorry, Todd. But I'm not going to have any problems bundling up this InDesign project and giving Todd a copy of that. That enables him to make small changes for a second printing, for example, if he sees a spelling error or something, without having to come back and pay me to do that. It's a bummer that I might not get paid to do that, but you got to be a nice person about these things and keep these working relationships in good order, because if it's cheaper for him to go through and correct a spelling error for printing number 3, even to swap out a painting because he did a nicer version of it, or he found a better version of it or something like that, and then it'll print better. That's how capitalism works. Like, if he can do it, and he's, he doesn't know how to use InDesign as well as I do, but he knows how to do design work, and he knows how to do typography fairly well. That's another rant you guys have heard me talk about. It's very rare, very, very, very rare that artists are good graphic designers and vice versa. They all think they are, but they aren't. I could draw and paint a fairly neat dragon that I could put on Reddit, and a bunch of people would be like, "That's a cool dragon, dude. Good job." But it's not going to be this fucking dragon or these dragons or anything even close to what Todd's going to do, right? And vice versa. He could lay out a book with some neat typography, but we're specialists in a thing for a reason, right? That said, Lee Moyer, who's the guy that helped him out on this, or Lee may have done, I don't know exactly what the work breakdown is. Todd and Lee did this. And Lee Moyer is a guy who is a pretty good hybrid artist, graphic designer. He's got a pretty good sense of design and typography. And Todd does as well, typography. So, and negative space and all that. That said, I forget why I started down on this rant. File management. I'm creating as clean as a file structure as I can, is the bottom line on this. So, phew. Those of you that have watched a few of these also know I tend to go on these little tangents, and that's what happens. What I'm going to do now, Todd and I have talked about this thing. As you can see up here, I have a filing, a labeling, a titling system that I am very particular with. The title of the thing I don't worry about as much, as long as it stays the same. The versioning is where I get super OCD about it. I have a large V with a number, and I have a little small v with a number, and the single digit numbers always include a 0. The big V is for major versioning, which is a little arbitrary, but what happens is I did a version of this and a certain layout, and we got so far into it and we decided to switch it up, and then we did it again. So we are on big V3, which is what is locked in, and there won't be a big V4. Well, there could be a big V4 if both of us lose our mind and decide we just want to change the whole book up, and Todd wants to give me another X hundreds and hundreds of dollars to reduce shit. There could be, but there's not going to be. But there are going to be more little V versions. And little V version 6 is the version that I did all these little corrections on, with all these little circles and red marks and things that we just kind of walked through. So the very first thing, I finally get to work 20 minutes into this video, is save as little version 7. And the reason you want to do that, and writers know this, and a lot of people know that, as you can see here, this was some in-paper stuff. I started the big V on version 2. I knew right away this was like almost a test version that didn't work out so well. I only did one big version 2, and then we locked it in pretty quickly. I believe these might have been like prototype sketch versions. So these little ones led up to that. End papers is a separate document, that doesn't matter. Here's some contract stuff. Here's all the art. And then you can see that this is in my professional work folder, which is under Todd Lockwood. Now, if I was super smart, within this Todd Lockwood folder would have been a Found Worlds folder, because that optimistically thinks that I may end up doing another project with Todd someday down the road. Or this would have been Found Worlds and then main book or art book, because we haven't actually discussed the sketchbooks that Todd offered on his Kickstarter. I may end up doing them, or it may be more beneficial for him financially to do them himself. And again, he's quite capable of doing that level. That he's quite capable of doing the sketchbook stuff on his own if he wants to. That said, obviously, I'd like to do them because I like getting paid for stuff, but that's neither here nor there. So, Todd Lockwood, big book, and then within that would have been like, Todd Lockwood, big book, sketchbooks, novel something, comic book, whatever, right? Whatever kind of projects we may be able to do down the road someday, you have that already set up, basically. But for now, as far as I know, I'm just doing this book, so I just sort of set up a Todd Lockwood file with these files in there. And then this is all the various versions of things. This art folder actually I don't think ended up even being necessary because we're using Dropbox basically, so, and that's its own thing. So anyway, save that. I'm going to do a quick check. Actually, I kind of forgot. As far as I know, yeah, as far as I know, I'm getting sound. So if this has been 20 minutes of silence, that's super annoying. But I assume somebody would have said something by now. Although I might be the only viewer in here. I do have an excellent connection though. All right. The issue isn't, there we go. I do this through OBS and I'm not an OBS expert, so that's what ends up, capture device. I think, yeah, anyway. All right, anyway. I'm going to hope, no, I'm not going to hope, I'm going to check. All right. So give me just a second here. Now that I've talked for 20 minutes. Live now. All right. Sorry, we're going to get a little feedback action here. Okay, cool. All right. Now, the next time I can be confident that this little indicator that's indicating that I have sound coming out, there's actually sound coming out, so that's cool. All right. All right, back to work. So I've done my save as, and now I'm going to go commence to jiggling. All right. So I have YouTube's little chat doodad open, and it's possible I will see chat stuff, but it's also possible that I won't. So somebody's, and if you're watching this after the chat, or after the live portion, which most of you will be, obviously chat is not an option for you. All right. Most of you, I'm guessing, are just peeking in to see what art is being included in the book. And I mean, I can be honest with myself here, and you're not too concerned about the actual process of creating the book other than just on a surfacey level here. All right, here, actually, what am I going to do? I'm going to work out this magic shit that's down below here. I'd like to move stuff around. Caption boxes, to me, need to be basically the last thing. You work in broad strokes, like painting initially, and then you get into detail. So I could start messing around with this, but I know that this is going to stay as a spread, and it's not going to cause any shenanigans elsewhere. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. Moving stuff around can cause shenanigans. So that's what I'm going to do first. All right, so I put some X's here to indicate that I want to use a black background. So let's do that. And those of you that watched the first video know that I've created some templated pages, basically. Templated background pages. I almost said background pages. So that is the Dritz texture indicator, but that's fine. Everything doesn't have to be exactly all the things. All right, let me do that. I think my neighbor's dogs are like, I hear this weird little sound that I thought might have been speaker or something, but I think my neighbor's dogs are like losing their shit over something. All right, so these S's, oh yeah, that's an issue too. Let's see here. This S stays. He's good. All right. So now, I think found kind of a workaround for, I don't know how much I talked about it last time, but Adobe had this pencil tool that started working a different way than the pencil tool had worked in the past, which is always glorious. And then I went online to try to get help, and of course got talked to about how to use the pencil tool, and it's like, I've used the pencil tool before. It's working differently than how it just worked. And then every lady watching went, oh, welcome to my world 24/7. Getting explained things that I already knew. All right. Yeah, it is my neighbor's dogs. Just hear this quiet little barking of these little dachshunds they have. My neighbor, so I live in Seattle, or close enough to Seattle, and my neighbor, who's 12 feet that way, we live in these little cottages that have this little central area, but they're pretty. He's honestly, it might be 25 feet away or 30 feet away or whatever. There's enough room for a little. We have a little side yard. It's their front yard because the house is facing their porch, and then there's a walkway in between the two of them. It's very rustic and neat, and they're very nice. They just had a kid, and they've been dealing with that, having to stay up and all that kind of kid stuff. He is a San Francisco 49er fan, unfortunately for him. So that Monday night game a couple weeks back, for you non-sporty people, San Francisco and Seattle are football teams in the same division, meaning it's important when they play each other for standings and whatnot. And they have been called rivals. Or it's been called a rivalry, but for the most part, it is basically one team kicking the other team's ass at various points in history. There have only been, honestly, a couple of games that have mattered, that have come down to crazy rivalry shit. One of them was the infamous, I don't think it was a Monday night game. Maybe it was a Sunday night game. I don't remember, but it was a game to get into was it the championship? I think it was. Yeah, it was basically the game to get into the Super Bowl the year Seattle won the Super Bowl. And cornerback Richard Sherman made a little tip, and then he talked a bunch of shit after the game because he was hyped up on adrenaline, and he's 25 at the time or whatever, and that's what 25-year-olds do. And then he got a bunch of crap for that, and that turned into a big old mess because it's kind of like, you can dislike the dude, but like everybody talks crap. in football. Like any competitive at that level, basically, they're nice to each other afterwards, and they switch off jerseys and do all that kind of stuff. But in that heat of the moment, man, you're talking shit, basically, and that's just the way the world works. But that was a super close game that had ramifications, actually fairly serious ramifications for San Francisco. That kind of, their fortunes went severely downhill after that game for a long time. And then other than that, it was mostly us kicking their ass for a while. And then this year, San Francisco is leading the division. I think still leading the division. There should be like a little, there we go. It should kind of tell you where the halfway mark is. And so that Monday night game, that is not the halfway mark. God damn it. The halfway game, or the Monday night game was very, very important for both teams' fortunes. So it was one of the better Monday night games that have been played in years. And it came down to overtime, and then overtime literally came down to the very last play. Because in regular season in American football, overtime is, there's one bonus quarter played. Let's see, I want texture with no page number texture. That's what I want. Overtime, one quarter is played in overtime, and then if you don't come to a resolution at the end of that, it's a tie. In the playoffs, obviously, they just keep playing overtime quarters until somebody wins. So this was not a playoff game, but San Francisco was 8-0, and Seattle was 7-2, or something to the extent where it mattered a lot. And it went into overtime, and then it came down to literally the last play in overtime with like 4 seconds left on the clock. And Seattle won with a field goal. And it was a crazy back and forth game. That's fine. These actually ended up bigger than what they started out as. But I think I'll match them like these two. That is the way to do that. Okay, cool. So he was off somewhere watching it, and I was in my house watching it, and we didn't see each other for 2 or 3 days, my neighbor. And then when we saw each other, it was like, I don't know, it was like the old, we were just like, we immediately were like, high five, like pat on the back, man hug kind of thing, like, what a great fucking game. Like we both knew immediately what we were going to talk about. So that was pretty funny. But he's got a couple of dachshunds, and those things are barky. Okay, so what we're going to do, I know if Todd's watching, he's probably just screaming at his screen. He's like, do this. But we always end up, it always ends up being this thing that I do anyway, which is part of the reason that he hired me. He'll be like, do this thing, and I'm like already doing it. Because we both basically have the same mindset. So what's going on here is I'm all, perfect, micromanaging this shit because I want these two to match the next page. These have enough space on them that I can move them out of the gutter because he doesn't want stuff usually kind of button up against each other. What the fuck happened there? Is that a different ratio than the other one for some reason? Huh. So, oh, God damn it. There we go. Is there any more on this? Oh, there's plenty more on that. Shit. Do I want to make this narrower? This one is fatter. So let's do this. Oh, that one's fatter too. Interesting choices here. So I must have cut this one down because there's a bunch of rat stuff on the bottom here. That's about the most interesting angle we're going to get on that. And nice. So here's where the micromanaging stuff comes in. There's a bunch of little lights, like little stuff right there. And my choices are to have all of that fire in, which is somewhere right around there, but there's a little bit of gold. But then that leaves a little bit of a gap there, and this guy's elbow touching. So I don't mind the fire bleeding off because it looks cool. We'll just kiss the top with the hair. Now we've got all of that finger. And again, I talked about this a little bit last time. Like, in theory, if he's done a good painting and you're being a good viewer, your attention is mostly going to be right in here anyway. And then you'll kind of go around and look at some of this other stuff. But we're not too worried about how. There we go. All right. So then that is all rock. That is, okay, cool. And that's rock. I have had a cold forever. Technically, I guess they call it bronchitis at this point. And I am hankering a cigar, but there we go. Perfect. I don't need to be smoking a cigar today. It's usually, I had one Sunday. I might have had one Monday too. I can't remember. I think I did. And it's usually like a couple of days after, although this is Friday. I'm playing football tomorrow, which I always do on Friday or on Saturday mornings. And smoking on Friday and then playing football on Saturday is not a good combo. So that's my motivation for not doing it. Next week is Thanksgiving, and I always have a cigar on Thanksgiving, so I will most likely have one on Saturday after I play football, or maybe Sunday. Excuse me while I stretch. Sunday I'm going down to work to finish up a web series that we've been working on because I normally do filmmaking stuff. So I may have one that day. All right, that looks pretty good. Yeah, and then the captions are going to lay in there somewhere, but we're not going to worry about that right now. But I'll be able to have a bonus cigar on Thursday, so for me to go out today and have one, it's like, yeah, I do need to go buy some at some point. All right, so now getting into more complicated stuff. So all of these C's I can get rid of. See you later. So they can stay together, and then right here. This one, yeah. And then all of those C's. So now the issue is, can I take these two magic cards and get them up with other magic cards by swapping them out with a thing? Which I'm sure I can. This guy, for example, may end up, because these two are magic cards, that's magic stuff, that's magic stuff, that's not magic stuff, but it's its own thing. But that may get moved to, yeah, that's definitely going to get moved. All right, so let's do that first. Todd had originally set things up to be chronological, which isn't a horrible way to go at things initially, but I think the chronological needs to be the secondary thing. Chronological if possible, but I would rather have things that he worked on that are like, because we have like a Dritz section and a card section. So again, it's like the folder hierarchy. You know, you've got your Dritz section, you've got your collectible trading card section, and then within that section is magic, and within that section is anachronism, and within that section is the other thing that he worked on with the Colbert thing, World of Warcraft, maybe, I can't remember. So chronologically, he would have done cards across the span of several years. But if you start putting all the stuff in direct chronological order, then you're going to have different games mixing with each other, and there are fans of different games. Clearly, not everybody plays all the same collectible card games, so you'd rather keep those together. So this little guy is different. I don't know that there's really going to be anything I'm going to be able to do about that. Excuse me. So we have a Magic the Gathering section, which should start out with Magic the Gathering. I'll come back for you later. So that means, and it's not exactly at this point in his career as well. I could see an argument, the chronological argument, being done for some of his early work. There we go. Not being in the middle of some of his later work, because the early work was definitely not as good as the later work, because he's gotten better as an artist. But the magic stuff, this period, I think is stable enough. I mean, you're always, in theory, growing as an artist, and he certainly is growing as an artist still, even despite his decrepitly old age. Those are both Magic 2, and those I do not know if they're Magic. I don't think they are, and that's not Magic. All right. But yeah, keeping all the Magic cards together. Magic he worked on for a long time. There actually is a little bit of a difference between the early Magic cards and the later Magic cards, but not enough that it's going to matter. All right. What am I looking for here with my old ass eyes? Oh, these two guys, that's right. All right, which are right there. And that needs to switch with that. So this needs to come down to, oh. And this needs to come up to, oh. Now I go see what I have fucked up. So whenever you move pages around at this stage, you may have fucked things up. So those magics are good. That goes into that. That still's on a spread. That still looks good. That ends there. Aha. So this guy needs to switch with this guy, because those are the S's and those are the C's. Oh, and then we have it. Oh, yeah, it's gonna look good. I can see the future. I don't know why it bopped me all the way back to there. Because InDesign. Yeah. I might try to do something similar to what I did to those ladies up above. See if he goes for that. All right. So, I like this little dragony guy. We may be able. I mean, we may be able to switch him with a different piece. Although he's got a nice dragon right there that you can kind of hang out with. So, all right, let's do this while we're thinking about it. I have to go get me some chow in a little while. Let's go. None. And none. I'm doing intermittent fasting right now, which is the best and most awesome diet ever. It's basically just mitigating when you eat as opposed to what you eat. So I have not changed a thing that I've eaten. In fact, I'm eating in some ways less healthy than when I was on diet, which I'll get to in a second. But I only eat from noon to about 4 or 5. I have one big meal around noon, and I have a couple of smaller snacky things or another decent sized meal around 4-ish, where I get in all the calories all in a short period of time. And I've lost basically 15 pounds. I was 245, now I'm 230. And it's slow, so you're not getting that instant gratification thing, but you really should only lose a pound or two at the most a week normally in order to keep it off. Anything that's taking off more than, you can take off more than that. A lot of times when you initially start a diet, there's kind of like this dramatic drop off, and then it sort of evens out. But if you're consistently losing a shitload of weight for like, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in a row or whatever, it's not going to work out for you in the long run. You're going to put it back on. You're doing a lifestyle that's unsustainable, basically. And everybody's different. That's what they always say. It's harder for women to lose weight. It's harder for women to put on muscle. So I follow a couple of women powerlifters on Instagram, and it's just interesting to see all the different shenanigans they have to do basically to put stuff on. And that's also why when everybody was complaining, and I'm generalizing everybody, when people were complaining about Gal Gadot not having any muscle basically to play Wonder Woman, and I will admit to being partially on board that train. I do believe well, let's put this another way. I would have liked to seen an incredibly muscular Wonder Woman. I am totally okay with super muscular women. And there are a couple of, again, more than a couple, there are some gorgeous women bodybuilders that, if they would have been able to act, could have pulled stuff off. Now, before you all start typing all your Gal Gadot defense, blah, 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 I think she is doing a great job. She is incredibly charismatic, and that's selling it. I just would like to see the same sort of thing happen as, like, Chris Helmsworth is pretty charismatic, but they made him put on, a fuck ton of muscle weight in order to play Thor, for example. And Wonder Woman is definitely a character. It's kind of a weird mix with Wonder Woman because she's obviously a feminist icon, which is great. But she's also very sexualized by a certain element as well. And they want her to look curvy, or they want her to look, sexy and feminine and whatever. And it's like, that's fine, but she could also be like, if I ever did a Wonder Woman comic, meaning illustrated or even wrote and got to, give the illustrator. And I think Darwin Dwyer, I can't remember the dude's name, that did kind of a golden age one-off DC comic thing. And she was tall in that. She was like 8 feet tall or some shit. And I thought it was awesome. And that's what I'd want to see. I'd want to see like an 8 or 9 foot tall Wonder Woman that's just fucking jacked. I guess more like She-Hulk. Everyone's okay with She-Hulk being jacked because she's a monster or a Hulk or whatever. Anyway, we're getting into some weird side territory here. The point is, this intermittent diet has worked really well for me. I seem to be losing the belly fat, which when I put on weight, or I should say when I take off weight, it goes from my upper body, which makes me look even fatter because all the belly weight basically stays, and then I look like this big old gorilla. And even when I was 45, 46, like even at that age, I was still carrying a lot of muscle weight because I was still working out quite a bit. I don't work out anymore so much. I still play football. But I mean, there were times even within the last 10 or 15 years that I was 185 pounds of lean muscle mass, meaning with all the, like literally every single bit of fat stripped off me, I still would have weighed 185 pounds. I'm 6 feet tall. So when all the books are telling me like, oh, you're 6 feet tall, you should be between like 165 and 185, it's like, that's not going to work for me, guys. Sorry. I don't believe that there will be a time until I get really fucking old or really fucking sick that I would ever be below 200 pounds. I would like to get down to about 220, 215 even, I think would probably be all right. But I don't seem to be losing muscle mass to the same extent as if I was just blatantly taking off weight with the diety part. And it does seem to be coming a little bit more off my belly this time around instead of my upper body. So, point of all this, which there usually sometimes is, oops, kind of fucked up there. Yep, all right, is that at some point in the next little bit, I'm going to quit and go get something to eat. But what it also allows me to do, and I take some healthy bits, like I don't drink a lot of pop anymore. I will, on rare occasions, have my Dr. Pepper. I drink a lot of unsweetened iced tea because I still do like my caffeine. I don't drink coffee, which is weird living in Seattle, I know. I did not want to do that. What the fuck, thing? What are you doing? Why aren't you... There we go. So there was a tiny little gap there, and there shouldn't have been. Like the freaking... I know you experts are like, use your align tools. Oh, fuck. There we go. There. You happy now? And we still need... There. All of it is worth it. Just to milk an extra tiny little fraction. But because I'm not, I probably should strictly be, probably should be calorie counting, because intermittent fasting does not work if you just fucking pig out in your little windows to eat. That's asymmetrical, which is bugging me. Alright, so... But I don't. because I have a general idea about how much I should be able to eat. But yeah, I can't even say that I necessarily cut down on a lot of sugar anymore like I was when I was dieting either. I definitely feel okay having a bag of M&Ms, peanut M&Ms for the record, um, during the day. Honestly, the only thing that I've probably gone a little too crazy with on this thing is I tend to eat a little more potato chips than I used to, which aren't the best thing for you, obviously. There. I love this line. All right. Although there's other parts, like if I was to flip her, then this and this would match into a mass here. Actually, here, we can just do it. So I can just flip her back. So now you've got this mass and the figures. I actually almost like that better. Huh. Interesting. I'm trying to, like, you want to be able to see the art the way you remember it on the card on one hand, but on the other hand, look at that. So good. The mask, you get the clouds doing the same thing. Yeah, I'm going to leave it here. Todd has, I believe, with 100% accuracy, notice when I've flipped art, I haven't done it a lot. There's been, that may be like literally like the third one I've flipped. It's very rare. All right, so all of these are going to have to be sort of resized, but I'm going to do that later. Again, you can get caught up in a morass if you start getting distracted by a thing. Basically, you need to set a goal. And that goal for me today is just to move everything around where it belongs. When I was talking to Todd yesterday, I was like, I'll get you some stuff by Friday night to show you what I did. And I thought it was Wednesday. And then my girlfriend comes home and she's like, blah, 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 Friday. And I'm like, I got like 2 days to work on Todd's stuff. And she's like, today is Thursday. And this was like 9 o'clock last night after I talked to him. And I was like, God damn it, it is. So I have today, because unfortunately tomorrow, again, I will be playing football. I could actually work on it in the afternoon, but I usually try to, unless a deadline is just kicking me in the balls, I really do want to have days off and a weekend. Plus, I have so many of my own projects that I need to move forward on as well. So Saturday and Sunday. Sunday, I'll be working on the web series thing I was talking about, which, by the way, is going to be awesome if you're into comics. We're doing a fan film of Birds of Prey. And it's not the Birds of Prey with Harley Quinn, because I don't want to go on too much of a rant, but Harley Quinn is not in Birds of Prey. She has her own group called Gotham Sirens, and that's the movie they should have made with Harley Quinn. And that will probably not be the last time I talk about that. But we did an old school Birds of Prey, so it's Black Canary and Oracle, doing Black Canary and Oracle stuff. And it has a 60s, 70s vibe, basically, to it. With the color, I did very magenta-y, kind of washed out cinematography. And Black Canary has these big old platform boots on that are like, they probably are only like 4-inch heels, but they seem like they're like 6 or 8-inch heels or whatever. And she learned how to kick in those things, which is awesome. Or was able to kick, I guess. She, I think, probably already knows how to kick. And we designed, and it's a little bit of a mix of stuff. We designed some kind of holographic glasses for Oracle. So she is on the computer because that's what Oracle does. But she also has these little holographic projections that pop out. So what are the shape of these things? Anyway, I'm working on that on Sunday. And then I'll get back to Todd on Monday. But then, of course, Monday there's shopping and other stuff, so it usually happens in the afternoon. I do not love the amount of space we're given here because I'm not going to be able to. There are definitely those dogs there. The neighbors that direction also have two dogs, little Chihuahua, just super obnoxious. And I tend to believe that dogs' bad behavior is really just owners' bad behavior. And I like the neighbors that direction. They're very, very cool people. But I don't think they really give a fuck about getting those dogs to be quiet. So kind of learn to tolerate. I think there's only been one time where there was some summer day this year where it was just hot as balls. So I had to have like all the windows open and the back door was open and all that. And like three, and they have a relative that comes over that has their own dog as well. It's the same sort of like super barky, obnoxious Chihuahua. And so there were three of them running around. And then one of them came in the backyard and was trying to harass my cat through the thing, through the sliding glass door and scream. So that was the one case where I had to go outside and be like, oh, we gotta nip this in the bud, sorry. Normally they don't actually bother me, it's just if you could get the things to quiet up somehow. So that's, I don't love this. Well, sort of now. Let's do this as just a thought experiment. How about that? I saw flashing over to the side, and it was just me working on my delay here. I have the, again, I guess OBS software, which is what you use to stream with, and it's on live time. Yeah, it's like live. YouTube, on the other hand, is delayed quite a bit, actually. Like, seems like 7 or 12 seconds or something. So when I look over at it, stuff is happening from moments and moments and moments ago. But the OBS one, see, I miss out on the gun and that kind of thing. All right, so normally, if I was to commit to this bit, you'd start taking a look at these things and you'd kind of see like what order they need to go in, and you'd sort of start arranging them in different orders to see what looks good. Sometimes it's color, sometimes it's a shape. Like that's no good. This is nice. This guy's face ending in a gun is a little weird. Yeah. Basically none of this is going to work. Crops off way too much. If we had an open spread somewhere, which we don't. These really probably should be on two spreads, or two horizontal things should be underneath them. No. Or would be on the opposite. The opposite page would have more things taken up space-wise, I guess. All right. So it's at the halfway mark. God damn it. much of that missing. I can tell I'm starting to get hungry because my thought process is not going as quickly as it should be. All right. So that basically is as much as I can crop that bad boy. Those different ratios. Oh, I see. Yeah, there. Right. The one, here's the thing, we're going full bleed this way. I can't, I might be able to. Oh, shit. Oh, it might be this one, actually. Oh, it's that guy's face again. All right. It's not giving me the halfway mark for some reason. There we go. Sorry I don't have one of those things that are showing you like keystrokes and stuff for those of you that might actually give a shit enough to be learning things. I'm certainly not going to sit here and go through what every keystroke is that I'm doing. Don't like you guys that much. Oh, can't get both their faces in there. It's not horrible. It's not lined up perfectly. That is the sound of a kitty cat. All right. It's just muddy. Hello, pussycat. It's mighty patches. So let's try about there. I think that's going to work okay. What's up, Patches? What are you doing down there? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. That's pretty good. I only had to ask her like 4 times that time. This is Fuzzy Patches. Hello, Fuzzy Patches. Patches is a rescue kitty. She's a long-haired calico. Very vocal. She's got a cute little fake tongue of fur right there. And she has her own Instagram, which is PQTCHES. Patches with a Q instead of an A, basically. Patches of Instagram. So if you want to go follow her fuzzy adventures, she sleeps a lot. She is middle-aged, 14-ish, we think, maybe 15-ish by now. And she's never been the most, what you got down there? She's never been the best jumper. She's not chonky, but she's definitely a good-sized cat. And she's been a little more jumpy the last few months, which is good. She had a, like, twisted her paw doing something because she is not super graceful. But she's super adorable. She's probably doing a lot better now than she would have been. Oh, that doesn't look good. That's what happens when you adjust things non-proportionally. Like all creative types, I talked about going to get something to eat like half an hour ago, but I get locked into these little things that I need to get done. Goals I set for myself. What is going on? I can already tell that this one is way off. As far as, how do I have that middle already marked? Yes, I do. Man. That's going to be slightly off because these ones are gaining an extra little bit because they're sitting in the gutter. So in theory, let's do this. Like the smoke on that smokestack, unfortunately. But, and, oh, duh. This needs to bleed. Those look so disproportionate to each other. I can just tell with my naked eye. All right, so that one bleeds off the side by a smidge, and that's fine. Well, that one is the same size. That one bleeds off the same, huh? Look at that. So it is symmetrical. Just the nature of the image itself. So that one, shrink up. Oh, nope, not that much. Okay, cool. Yes, patches. Patches has been a little spoiled. Imagine that, a spoiled cat. There was a fair period of time when I was working, I wasn't, I was working on my own stuff. So for one, I'd take breaks a little more frequently. And two, maybe I could sit on the couch every once in a while and just hang out, play a video game or something with her. But on days where I'm working on this, that does not happen. So she gets a little needy, like cats do. The reputation of cats being solitary, standoffish creatures is, of course, the complete opposite to anybody that actually owns cats. They're super sociable and very much want, usually, I mean, if they're well-adjusted cats anyway, they want to get played with and cuddled and all the rest of that stuff. They just kind of want it more on their own terms. It's that classic difference between dog people and cat people, I guess. It's like, do you want someone who will obey you, or do you want someone that you have to negotiate with a little bit, I guess? All right, that actually turned out okay. I'm glad I spent some time on that. That looks fine. And then caption. So all of those together, this random guy that could get swapped out with any other random one shot. So that's fine. These two I think might be together, and these two I think are similarly connected. This is going to need to get adjusted, which is why there's a little circle there and all that. He wanted her visually in the center, which is about there. But we do kind of want a full bleed, so that means that probably end up just pushing it a little bit. Something in there. But I'll mess around with that later. Oh, dryads. I don't think, is there enough? Like, I think these dryads could just be like that. There's not really enough side to side though. Like, we're pretty much seeing everything that's there. We're losing, right? Yeah, we're losing top and bottom a little bit out of those guys. And there's not much we can do there. Okay, so there's these guys. Good thing about the magic stuff, I guess, it's going to be, I don't want to, but it would be relatively easy to move them around once we have everything in place. If you wanted to be like, this dragon needs to go there or whatever. But honestly, like, these two match up pretty well, those match up, so there might be a little bit of adjusting that way. All this fire stuff up here, and then another, like, I could go find another dragon to match up with that dragon. This guy, for example, throw it there, or that guy, although I kind of like those two together, like the feathers. So yeah, they'll just be kind of arbitrary things. It'll be like, oh, those two should match. I might do a little of that. All right, and then we have that. I really like this spread. I'm glad that he did as well. This is magic, obviously. All this magic. So these three, do they need to go at the end of the magic cards, which I believe are there? No, they're not. They are there, right after the druids. Right? So the magics. I think the druids. All right, so the druids should count. Yeah, because those are. These I'm pretty sure are magic. Magic fans out there watching are like, yeah, White Heart. It's definitely a magic card. That must have been a packaging or a poster or something. All right, madness. Okay, cool. So these other non-magic cards can go after Char. Right now it's the druids, so there. Okay. Now, we do have this little guy here, but that at least is a Wizard of the Coast card game for Doomtown. There was a very brief moment in time that I was one of the best Doomtown players in the world. Brief. I also designed a pretty neat multiplayer set of Doomtown rules that ended up in Top Deck, I think, at one point. Because we used to do a lot of multiplayer Doomtown when I worked at Wizards during our lunch break. I never did the Sweet Rock, like, influency grabby strategy, though, which was the winning strategy for the most part for several years. I tended to try to do other stuff. Shotgun decks or cheaty law dog decks or whatever. Cool. All right, so I gotta grab the process for that. I think so that spread needs to be done. I think we're okay now. Aside from sliding stuff or like adjusting things, which will come, and that's so the next step will be to lay in captions, because that will require a lot of micromanagement of the pieces themselves to adjust them slightly in order for the words to be on black or darker backgrounds, that kind of thing. Resize some of the ones that have been adjusted for other things. This, for example, yeah, that has to be resized so that captions fit down there. I was like, hey, we could caption this, but then we're using this way up front as one of the front pieces, and putting a bunch of shit on it already. So I was like, I'm gonna try to just make that like open in its full glory. That one too. It's like, I don't want to put anything on that. There's a woman somewhere up here. There's the there was a red cloaked woman down below, but up here somewhere there's another there she is, the red dressed woman. This blue cloaked woman. So nice. And I think part of it, I mean, it's a good painting, but I think part of it is that he doesn't work in blue very often, or not nearly as often as red, because I mean, he's painting fucking dragons, and there's usually fire and a bunch of other crazy shit that is red. So all these soft blues, and then you combine that with this. This is definitely something that Painter excels at, is like being able to put these kind of soft light reflection things. Although, to be fair, that fucking dude, the good brush dude, what is that guy's name? I can't remember the dude's name now, but he's this dude who's a Photoshop artist. He does what's going on? It feels like it's going over the same pages over and over again. Okay, cool. I'm going to find that guy for you guys. Because anyone watching this long, should be rewarded. What do we got here? It's, I want to say it's, yeah, I can't remember. Now, some of you may be thinking, hey, you're working on this book for Todd. What are you doing promoting this other guy's artwork? And I'm not promoting this other guy's artwork. And I think that something high tides floats all boats or whatever. But as far as Photoshop stuff is concerned, it's basically just goodbrush.com. This guy. You want to talk about this guy's use of light and stuff is pretty fucking crazy. He does a lot of conceptual stuff for films and all that, like stuff like this. But anyway, buy this book first. But if you have any money left over, I don't think that guy actually has a book. That was just something I wanted to share because of use of light and Todd's use of light, like this kind of stuff. Glowy green on her is awesome. That's the kind of stuff I notice in paintings, basically, primarily. Like there's tricks you learn when I did art direction and just in general. You can tell it's like anything else when you become educated in it. It starts separating like the good and the bad, and it's like the difference between your buddy who does good barbecue and the dude up the road that has like a barbecue restaurant and wins awards in barbecue. Like some people can do things pretty well, but when you're a professional at it, when you're a craftsman at it, it's consistency, which, I mean, as we page through here, you can see consistently spectacular shit. That's really awesome too. And then it's little detail stuff. For artists, one of the details that is kind of known for like art directors and teachers and whatnot are hands and feet. If you have someone who is disguising the hands or hiding the hands or doing a lot of fists, that's not usually a good sign, right? Because hands and feet can be hard. So hands, hands, hands. Like he could have hidden that hand behind that if he wasn't comfortable painting hands. Or this, for example, where you don't have just the straight on, like flat dimensional fist thing. You have this crazy, like knuckle curving things that are going on. That kind of stuff here. You could fold these fingers flat, but he's got a little bit of knob, a little bit of stuff there. That one especially, these ones, granted, have the feet covered in grass, but they are long grass. And by this time, you're not painting a lot of feet unless you're doing comics. I say as I start looking at Todd's, oh, maybe he does bad feet. No, there's some shoes, so we're fine. So yeah, just paperback covers in general don't have a lot of need for showing feet. And feet aren't usually super interesting. Comic books, you'll see a lot more feet. There's some feet, it's fine. Boots and all the rest of that. So that's one of the big things. Turning things on an axis as well too. You can't kind of tell here because it's a little pixelated, but that sword isn't like flat this way or flat that way. It's turned. That's one of the things. There's another fantasy guy who does a lot of stuff for Pathfinder and did some stuff on Warhammer game that I worked on and all that, who's Wayne Reynolds. And Wayne Reynolds is a master of being able to turn swords kind of like three-quarter biasy sort of thing, which I think was a comment. There was a story, a TSR story that gets told a couple of times, but this was, yeah, I think it gets told here. This is one of the first, this was basically the painting that I think got Todd permanent work at TSR, staff job. Yeah. And the comment was like the sword on the bias, or, kind of like offset the perspective on it. It's what captures people's imaginations or helps separate stuff. And then the use of light, which gets us back around to the original thing, right? And so you see good use of light through this early work. The fact that he's brave enough you see a definitive light source, which comes from having good photo reference, honestly, at least initially, this kind of stuff. Right? But there's still kind of an edge to it, or there's a difference in my mind between that early work and then you get into here, where you have a light source that's lighting things up. There's a light source. There's a certain glow that starts happening as an artist gets more confident, more comfortable. And, the reflection on the snow and then the snowflakes and all that. They talk about, again, I'm a film guy. There's an essay, Every Frame of Painting is the name of the website. That there's one on David Fincher because there's a million on David Fincher. But he talks specifically about Fincher's ability to use a long shot and his lack of close-ups. Basically, the more confident that Fincher got in his filmmaking, the fewer close-ups there are. And you see a lot of close-ups and stuff on television, especially in low-budget stuff. Action scenes, you see all these close-up, edit, fast edits, and it's like, if you've created something, like if you're confident as a filmmaker and you've created interesting, I love this thing too, and you've created interesting blocking and story and all the rest of that, you can get wider. You can show that long shot and you can leave that long shot on for a longer period of time, and you don't need a close-up to draw the viewer's attention into, like, look at this thing. And that was one of the problems, one of the numerous problems that, again, I'm not going to get into with Solo, the Solo movie, is, when he gets handed his gun and we need to see a close-up of the gun, like, look, it's the gun. It's like, we don't need to see that. Like, it can be okay. This is great. All this stuff back here. So yeah, when you start getting that confidence to just, do these crazy, this is crazy difficult planning as far as like source of light, because you've got that atmospheric, I forget what they call it, the atmospheric thing where things get faded as they go further back, and then you've decided to arbitrarily put a bird here. Like, why did he put this bird here, right? And it's like, that bird, this isn't a photograph. The bird just doesn't come down and land here. This had to be planned out for some reason, right? And part of it is like, oh, maybe it was part of the story, or you wanted to have kind of like a thing, but the placement of this bird is there for a reason, right? I'm going to guess, I haven't talked to him about this explicitly, but I'm going to guess that, first of all, the attention that it gives to the central thing, right? And then it breaks up this tree trunk and this whole sort of like morass of darkness that's happening right here. He could have had this just fade into the background and basically look like this. But you want to put this bird here. And then you decide whether or not you want to have a black bird or red bird or a white bird. And again, maybe the white bird was part of the story. But then on top of that, though, it's like, well, blackbirds are cool, but in the context of this green forest, it'd be super cool? Fucking white bird that's backlit. So he's got all this fucking glow on his feathers, and it's darker in the middle where he's not as translucent, that kind of thing, right? And then you're hitting edge light on these trees, and you're understanding like where the tree shadows are going, and that kind of thing. So anyway. All right, we have successfully sucked up, Jesus, almost 2 hours this time. And I got barely anything done. But what I did get done was very important. I got everything in place. So now the next step is going through and starting to put the actual captions in with the actual words that go in the captions instead of placeholders. And as I do that, things are going to just basically feel or be finished page to page, right? And since there are only 352 pages in this book, each page that I get done is going to feel like a little victory. All right, that's it. I will potentially be doing another one of these the next time I work on this, which I'm going to guess is Monday. I'll work a little bit more this afternoon once I get my chow, but I won't turn the camera back on for that. Hope you had a good time. Feel free to leave comments. Feel free to give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't. And when you subscribe, be aware that this book project at some point will go away. So if you're here for the book project, that's awesome. And I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate it if you decide to subscribe. But just keep in mind, take a look at the rest of the channel, just to make sure you know what you're getting into, because a lot of it I'm going to be working on a bunch of different projects. Sometimes I'm going to a lot of times I'm going to be working on film projects, and then occasionally I'm going to be working on, I may just decide to do some essay on a thing, which I think I've done a couple of times. But one of the things that I want to talk about actually at some point in the near future is the new Watchmen series that's come out on HBO. because like everything else nowadays, there's this big political divide that sort of happened around it, and it unfortunately distracts from the fact that, in my opinion, it's a phenomenal series, and it's capturing the feel of the comic book aesthetic very, very well, and taking place in the same world. It does not take place in the world of the movie, which is kind of its own thing. And especially when you go back and watch the movie now, and then reread the comic now, which I've done both, and then you're watching the HBO Watchmen thing, you're like, yeah, the series is definitely the comic, and the movie is not connected to either one of those things, honestly, other than just the names and a little bit of the story beats. Anyway, that will hopefully someday be an essay, and that's one of the other things that you can sort of look forward to when you subscribe to the channel. So again, thanks again, and take care.